Now, without further delay, let's begin today's event, sponsored by Doxum and hosted by American Banker. I'd like to introduce you to your moderator today, and that is Mike Sisk. Mike, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Karen, and I would like to welcome the audience once again. We are very grateful that you've chosen to share some of your busy day with us. We know that your time is valuable, and we will honor that today with what I'm confident will be an engaging 60 minutes or so of discussion. Once again, our topic today is how to build a framework for omnichannel customer communications. And my name is Mike Sisk. I will be your moderator today. I'm a contributing editor at American Banker, and my articles have also appeared in Barron's, Crane's New York Business, Inc., Institutional Investor, Strategy and Business, and Worth. And I am very, very pleased to introduce our three speakers today. The first, Doug Graham, is the Chief Information Officer for Commonwealth Credit Union in Frankfort, Kentucky. He enjoys working within a culture that shares a common purpose of bettering lives through our passion to serve. Doug enjoys bettering lives by delivering innovative technology to CCU's members without sacrificing the personal touch that credit unions are known for. He leads a team of individuals that share his passion for thinking outside the box and embracing change. As an experienced public speaker, Doug is often invited to speak at various conferences each year on subjects like leadership and cybersecurity. And being a major extrovert, Doug loves these opportunities to personally interact with CCU's members and potential members. So really, really pleased to have Doug here with us today. And also with us is Mia Papanicolaou. Mia is Vice President, General Manager at Striata, a Doxum company. She heads up Striata's North, Central, and South American operations, providing strategy and direction for both internal teams and clients alike. Mia provides strategy, advice, and consultation to companies and is a regular speaker on digital customer communications and improving the customer experience. She started her career in South Africa in the media sector before moving to the electronic messaging space, where she served as business director for email marketing company eMessageX. She joined Striata in 2006 as head of email marketing, and Mia moved to the UK as head of operations 2010, after which she transferred to the US in 2013 to take up the post of general manager of the region and then the reins as COO. And we are also really, really pleased to have Mia here as well. And also joining us is Elizabeth Steffen. Elizabeth is Vice President Customer Engagement at Striata, a Doxum company. She oversees all commercial business and channel management in North and South America. And for the past decade, Liz has managed teams of sales groups both nationally and internationally. She has a true passion for helping customers identify their needs and consulting with them to help fill those needs. Since joining Striata, Liz has taken a keen interest in customer communications management and helping clients utilize digital communication to meet their CX goals. So there you have it. We have an excellent panel today. Really looking forward to the discussion. Just before we jump into things, I wanted to reiterate one point that Karen made at the top, and that is that we do have time at the end for Q&A. We usually set aside 10 or 15 minutes, and you don't have to wait until the end to put your question into the queue. You can do that throughout the hour as the question occurs to you. So we really encourage you to get those questions in there. If for some reason we don't get to a question you've asked, sometimes we just run out of time. Sometimes it's just a question that's better addressed kind of one-on-one after the program. In any event, if we don't get to a question in the time we have today, we will definitely follow up with you afterward. So your voice will be heard. Please ask away. We very much want to hear from you. And so now let me just kind of real quickly kind of run through our agenda today. So we're going to lead off with why having a plan for digital transformation matters and how to begin this initiative. Then how to create a framework tailored to your organization's individual needs. And then we will discuss how to leverage customer communications management tools to deliver omnichannel personalized communication, which includes business critical documents. And then after that, of course, we'll have the Q&A that I just mentioned. So there you have it. There's our agenda. I've introduced you to our speakers, and now I would officially like to turn things over to Liz to really get the ball rolling. Liz, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having us today. We're very excited to speak with you all. To begin, I'd like for you to think about this statement for just a moment. Yesterday's expectations for innovation are out the window. Even though the stakes for innovation in banking were rising before the coronavirus arrived, now a true culture of innovation is a matter of survival through and beyond the pandemic. Accenture didn't hold back at all in their recent Banking Technology Vision 2020 report when they stated that the reality is the pandemic exponentially shifted customer expectations forward, and heightened levels of anxiety coupling with that really compounded the pain of fractured customer communications. So delivering on the omnichannel promise prior to the pandemic was of so much more importance. How much more is it needed now? No longer can we have this as a goal for the future. If we remember just 5 years ago, Celent focused on the definition of what omnichannel in the banking world looked like. The consensus was that omnichannel was defined as making sure that customers were able to seamlessly move across channels and have consistent experiences in any channel that they chose to engage with you in. Now, that was 5 years ago. Where are we today? We know that many banks have made strides, but still many struggle with delivering on this real omnichannel promise. And as a result, still view this as a top priority. So that's where we're going to begin our discussion today. Doug and Mia, first of all, I want to say thank you for chatting with us on this topic today. We all know that digital transformation has taken on many meanings, and we've included omnichannel within that digital conversation. But now more than ever, organizations are challenged with delivering on this. So I'd like to start the discussion today with you, Doug, by asking you, as a CIO, how do you define digital transformation, and what does it mean for you at Commonwealth Credit Union?
Well, for us, digital transformation means creating a digital experience that gives a member who lives 100 miles from our branch the same products and services as one that lives 100 yards from our branch. He's given the member full control of how they communicate with us, and it allows them to change that communication channel in the middle of a conversation if they want to. And finally, it means minimal clicks with maximum results. We believe that transformation to a digital platform that's difficult to understand or use misses the point altogether. Our goal isn't to go digital. Our goal is to use digital technologies to deepen the relationships that we have in the communities we already serve.
Wow, Doug, I really appreciate how you mentioned some key words there, right? Simplicity, ease of use. So I think that really lends into the next question, which is, what do you see as the key area that financial institutions can focus their time right now in order to truly transform? And so I'd like to start with your take on it first, Doug, and then we'll ask Mia the same question.
Well, I feel like the best solutions begin with infrastructure. When COVID became a reality for us, all of our members turned to the call center for transactions, and our call volumes were astronomical. We ended up with exceeding our capabilities. We had members with dropped calls. We had members who were on hold for too long, and it became quite a busy place to be in the call center. Fortunately, we were in the process of deploying a new phone system at the time, so we just upped the priority on that project. We pushed it through quickly. Once we made that transformation to the new system, we were able to handle all of the calls, and we were at about 50% capacity instead of maxing out every day. So I think that solid infrastructure is what allows remote workers to be truly productive. It provides video conferencing that staff can have conversations between each other and share documents and share content and record that for future use. It also gives a realistic experience to those type of video conference sessions. It also provided us with a way to deploy ITMs, which are video teller sessions, and it let our members have access to our tellers in live mode without being there in person, though miles were between them. If we deploy the best products and services in the world possible, but your infrastructure is weak, your members are going to find a way to find that experience with somebody else.
Thanks, Doug. I really like how you brought that point up. If your members are frustrated, right, they will look elsewhere for a better customer experience. So your answer was spoken like a true CIO talking about infrastructure. Mia, what's your take on what Doug has said? What do you think is the key area financial institutions really should focus on now?
I think that particularly now, you need to be meeting customer expectations. And that means being able to be nimble and adaptive in what solutions you're offering them, because customer expectations change. And this pandemic is just one example of how customers really moved digitally. And as Doug mentioned, you have to have infrastructure in order to ensure the products and services are able to be deployed and customers can use them quite easily. But I think that the biggest problem is that communication has to be tied to whatever changes you're making. The biggest issue customers have is that they don't know how to manage many of these changes that are all of a sudden present, and at times they're the only option. Communication has to come to the fore, especially during this pandemic. Customers feel really out of place and out of sorts. So as much as companies are making changes, without communicating how their customers can make those transitions into digital transformed environment, it makes it a lot more difficult for them, and the frustration actually increases.
Excellent point. I agree with you. You know, a lot of frustration that we've seen in the area of customer experience throughout this pandemic has been related to a lack of communication in general. So infrastructure and communication, right, they have to go hand in hand. So Doug, what do you think about Mia's view here, right? Starting with customer communications. What does that mean for CIOs at other banks? And what are the things that they would need to think about and plan in order to really change customer communications?
Well, I agree that communication is the foundation of everything. I live by the rule that it doesn't matter how well you say it, it just matters how well they hear it. And effective communication takes practice and daily effort. You can't hand a customer a stack of paper, ask them to take it home and read it, and expect them to do that. At the same time, you can't read it to them, expect them to listen to you. So in the digital world or in person is the same objective. You have to find a way to explain what you're talking about in a way that's a personal experience for them, something they can connect to. That's what creates an experience that grows the relationship, and that's what creates the opportunity to have a communication experience.
Mm-hmm. I love how you're tying the communication to the relationship, right? Because that's what all banks are looking to do, is increase that relationship, right, with the customer. That's what makes that relationship all the more valuable. So we all know that banks have challenges, right, with data. If we want to create relationships with the customers, we need to know who they are, right? So we know that challenge, it resides in the fact that there are many legacy systems. Many of them are quite disparate. They don't often talk to each other, and they're often managed by different groups within the organization. So how do you create a truly actionable digital transformation plan that will affect real change within your customer communications now and isn't dependent upon, you know, a core system change that we all know will take multiple years to get off the ground? So Doug, why don't we start with you with that question?
Well, that is a huge task, and it'll look different for each organization depending on how diverse their systems are. For us, we have numerous ad hoc systems that are utilized by various business units, and many of those systems are populated by extracts from the core system. Technically, our goal is to create a data warehouse that can receive data in the same manner as the ad hoc systems, so a broader view of the data can be seen. Once migrated, we'll begin taking the ad hoc systems down. The goal is to bring all the data into one place so that everyone can see it within the same context. We're in the process of deploying the technical portion of that now, and at the same time, we formed committees and councils to perform data governance and determine objectives for the new system and what we hope to accomplish overall for the entire organization. This is allowing us to learn what the same data means to various team members and to various business units. And from those conversations, we hope to create a collaborative strategy that helps us not only better the member experience, but better the staff experience as well.
Mm-hmm. Those are good points. Mia, what do you think about this?
Doug mentioned bringing data into a single warehouse, and one of the key words for me that Doug used was seeing the data context, because many financial institutions are looking to have a single view of the customer, which is great when it comes to communication, but not so great when the customer is a different customer when it comes to commercial or personal banking, for example. So I, as a personal banking customer, could have a mortgage, a credit card, a savings account, a checking account, and be a named account holder on a commercial account, but I'm not the same customer commercially as I am personally. And so context is everything. And so rather than a single view of the customer, I would say that we really need a single profile view of the customer, so that you're dealing with that person as their profile. So either personally or commercially or any other way that you need to view them and speak to them quite specifically.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm glad you're bringing this up because, you know, when we speak to financial institutions, we're always hearing about the goal of getting to the single view of the customer. So I'm excited that you're bringing up that there's another layer to that, right? It's the single view or profile of the customer, because a customer can have multiple profiles with a particular financial institution. So why you don't want to be treated the same, right, throughout the entire process. So I know, Mia, you had a particular personal story that really gives us a good example of why we need to look beyond single view and look at single view of the profile.
Yes, and it actually happened through COVID with so many of these war stories, actually. I bank with a particular bank, and the company banks with the same bank, and I'm a named contact on the company account. And when COVID hit, it was really difficult to make sure that we were on top of everything. And the one thing I didn't want to miss was any company notices coming from the bank. So even though we're a paperless with the bank, I wanted to ensure that there were no notices sent to the office when we're all working from home. And so I changed the notification address to my personal address so that I could get them all. And what happened was they matched my personal address from the company account to my personal address with my personal banking account, and immediately overwrote the email address, the company email address, and sent a confirmation email to my personal email address. Now, I'm not the same person, and the notifications for the company have to go to the company email address. And to me, that was a larger frustration where I'm trying to make my life easier. And I had to actually get hold of the bank and try and make them roll back these changes they were making, but still keeping my personal address, which was actually a bigger task than you could ever imagine.
I can only imagine. You were probably speaking to someone who had no idea what you were trying to tell them.
Oh, so many times. I had to verify a few company purchases, and they asked me for my personal credit card number to verify my identity. And I was so frustrated with the entire process. Like I am the same person, but I'm not the same customer, essentially. So treat me differently.
Mm-hmm. So in this instance, you had the business profile versus your personal profile. But we know that customers, you know, at banks could have multiple, right? They could have not just those two profiles, but they could want to keep their sort of wealth and retirement separate and so forth. So we need to be cognizant of that. And I think you're sort of spelling that out for the audience loud and clear. So given there needs to be quite a bit of work then, right? If we need to get this data to the point of a single profile view, so not just the customer, but we're adding this additional layer. How do financial institutions create a framework that will drive progress in this area? So Doug, I'd love to start with your perception of this, especially given what, Mia has just described a single customer profile.
Well, this is a huge challenge for financial institutions because of culture more so than technology. For financial institutions, data has always been used to measure past success. It's rarely used for setting future direction. In a culture like that, silos are created where the occupants use ad hoc systems to use the data to justify their existence and verify their value to the company. They want the organization to do well, of course, but they kind of feel justified as long as their numbers come through to their satisfaction. They feel like they've done their part. So getting the right data to feed the communication means creating a new culture and a new environment that provides easy ways for business units to communicate and collaborate concerning goals rather than just tasks. And organizational leaders have a huge challenge for them. They have to promote the idea that failure is okay and that it's okay to fail as long as we fail forward. Those same leaders have to also help individuals and business units find their value in what they can do next instead of what they've done lately. Only then can we centralize the data and look at it without siloed agendas. Without a culture change first, business units will continue to seek out ways to make the data fit into their silos instead of the organization's strategic plan.
Doug, I think you brought out a point that I would love to stress to the audience, right? Too often we fall into this concept of the pain of change, right, outweighs the pain of gain. And you mentioned goals in your answer, and I think that's the number one thing, is what are the goals, and making sure that whatever framework you're developing needs to continue to progress you towards achieving those goals, and not allowing, right, this pain of change to get in the way. I was actually reading a really great article this past week in the MIT Sloan Business Review, and they recently had published this great study, and it was called The Building Blocks of an Innovation Culture. And the foundations had nothing to do with technology. Instead, there had to be a shift, right, a cultural shift, so that people weren't putting technology lipstick on a legacy pig. That's how they phrased it. So I think your point is exactly right? As a leadership team, right, we need to look at how do we create the framework so that we can affect real change. So with that, Mia, how do you advise, financial institutions? How can they make changes? How can they adapt to this culture of innovation and change? And how do they make progress? How do they actually move forward?
It's very difficult to make a culture change. I mean, that really does have to come from the top down. What I can advise from a strategic framework point of view is many organizations have a goal of where they need to get to, and putting a framework together and steps in place on how they're going to get there without this grand, it's just a 5-year plan and we're going to work towards a 5-year plan. Really looking at the framework as a means of meeting customer needs today and tomorrow. So how do the changes we make impact customers, and how does it fit into the framework that actually achieves the 5-year plan or whatever the goal may be? But that agility and adaptive business has to come from the top down, and it is a culture change.
Mm-hmm. I like this term, adaptive business. I think we're starting to really hear that a lot now throughout the pandemic. And, this framework, it sounds like what you're talking about is sort of a tool, right? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that for us, Mia?
Sure. We've put together a digital maturity framework for our customers, which plots them against the digital landscape, essentially, and lets them understand where they sit. So you ask any organization what their goal is, and it's usually customer experience. But when you drill down to where they sit and what their actual day-to-day actions and process changes are, they're really sitting in cost-cutting mode. And once you start plotting where you sit and where you need to get to based on the actual goals, and looking at the little changes you can make to move from one lane to the next, it makes a huge difference to the customer moving from, let's say, the starter to the professional, rather than waiting starter and thinking that you're going to leapfrog into expert. That's never going to happen. So it's the little changes that you make and measuring those changes against what you're doing that makes all the difference.
I like how you said the little changes. I mean, it sort of reminds me of micro changes, right? Looking at those little things, right, you can do right now that will actually affect the customer experience. And again, not having to wait until like you said, you're in that expert column. So Doug, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about the maturity framework? How do you see that being implemented at a financial institution?
Well, I agree. If you want to be successful, you have to have a roadmap and you have to have a way to measure your journey. The old financial plan that we've always used in the past just doesn't work anymore, where we used to say, hey, we need to increase loans, and then somebody would come up with an idea that they thought would increase loans, and then we would just pursue that idea until the loans went up and declare it to be a success. In the digital world, it changes every day, and we have to adjust to those changes each and every day. Goals need to be a lot broader than just what's on the bottom line. They have to deal with a lot of facts and a lot of information. As a matter of fact, profits and bottom line become a result and not an actual goal of what we're trying to accomplish. We want to know things like, why does a member use our digital platform? Did somebody convert from an online experience to a digital platform because of something we offered? What products do they like best? What products do they like least? How many clicks are they willing to make to get to where they want to go? All that information is important because our goals and digital maturity framework need to center around growing our relationships while at the same time measuring the results of our bottom line. Data is our most valuable asset that we have, and we need to know why our members do what they do rather than just what did they do. So this approach involves the entire organization and not just IT. And for us, we are doing this through committees and involving people from various departments to discuss the service levels and what we think are acceptable expectations, and then working toward those goals each day.
I like, Doug, how you have that multidisciplinary team, right, that's really looking at how you achieve your goals across the organization. And I think that really goes hand in hand with what Mia is describing as this digital maturity framework, really looking at, again, keeping the goals first at the fore and making sure that everything you do across the enterprise is going to get you closer to those goals. So, Doug, you also mentioned data and measurement, and so I'd like to take a few moments to sort of talk about that. Mia, how does a maturity framework allow you to measure progress against goals?
From my perspective, the framework isn't just a tool that you use in order to map out the next step to take. It has to be a living framework that measures your success against the steps that you did take. And if there are any changes to be made, that framework has to change. It cannot be a set in stone document, so to speak. The world changes and technology changes. And if you have to be willing to be nimble in terms of how you change, which means that framework changes constantly. But the only way to make sure that you're doing the right things, as Doug mentioned, is to measure. Measure every change and report back on the effectiveness of that change. So, for example, are your customers dropping off after a certain amount of clicks if you implemented something new? That dictates further changes or future direction, once again impacting the framework as a moving target.
Mm-hmm. Measure everything, right? And as Doug had said, not just knowing that something changed, but why did it change, right? Why did the customer do this? So I think that's a great point. Without measurement, right, the framework cannot allow you to move forward. So let's focus on the customer experience for a moment. We've talked a lot about sort of internally, the culture of change. We talked about data, sort of legacy systems. Let's focus on the customer experience. So everyone talks about making decisions with customer experience as the main driver. And Mia, you brought up this point that, everyone will say that's what's driving the decision. But when it comes down to it, typically, cost cutting or operational efficiencies are what win at the end of the day. So how do you make real progress, right? How do you really deliver on that omni-channel experience when you have to reduce expenses, especially now, right? We're in this mid-COVID world where most enterprises are suffering in many ways. So how do we achieve that? Doug, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that you can't buy your way into an extraordinary experience for the people that you serve. If you had unlimited funds and you purchased the very best products that were available on the market, that in no way guarantees you an extraordinary experience for the people that you serve. An experience is personal and it's emotional. There's an old saying that I love to use a lot that says people will forget what you say, people will forget what you do, but they will never forget the way that you make them feel. And every institution has to answer that question first. How do you want to make people feel? And when you're creating this digital experience, you have to have that in mind. The answer to that question has to be a lot deeper than even the goal. The answer has to be something that directs you and guides your entire team. Once you have that goal in mind, you can determine how much you can invest in the venture, and then you start looking for partners. And I would say don't look for the most popular partner, the one that has the most highest ranking, but look for the one that fits into your goals and your objectives and can deliver within your budget. When you find partnerships like that, you're creating a personal experience that's really going to matter.
I love how you talk about how the customer feels, right? I think especially in this pandemic era we're living in, empathy has become the sort of resounding quality that every single customer is looking for in the institutions they're banking with, right? They want to feel like the bank understands them. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And again, tying it back to your goals, right? When you're looking to deliver this type of experience that drives true emotion with your customers and develops that relationship, looking for partners who also have that in mind and who have that as a strength. So Mia, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question as well.
My view really is, for a great customer experience, none of the solutions can exist in isolation without communication. I've mentioned it before. And I'm so happy, as you are, Liz, that Doug mentioned it's about how you make people feel. So many companies got it wrong when COVID hit. They sent out these emails to all their customers trying to be sympathetic, but you can never understand what your customers are going through. You're not in their shoes. And being a corporation sending these emails out saying, we know what you're going through, just fell flat. And actually turned customers away. So understanding how you make a customer feel is really important. So empathy, yes, is of utmost importance. And it all comes down to communication. Make sure you let them know that you understand the difficulties that they're going through and you are there to help them and providing solutions. And Doug's mentioned a myriad of solutions that they've implemented, and I know many financial institutions have done the same. But communicating that in a manner that is helpful is really important.
Mm-hmm. I think you hit the nail on the head where you said customer experience cannot exist in isolation without communication. Right? That's key. Any relationship is built on the foundation of communication. So with that, I think that leads really nicely into our next section that we're going to talk a little bit about. Both of you are linking back everything to the customer, which I'm glad to hear, sort of both sides of the house, the business and the technical side of the house, looking at the customer at the fore again. But if that's really true, right, if it's all about the customer and we're speaking specifically about customer communications, then we really need to get to that omnichannel experience. So how do financial institutions really leverage tools, right? So CCM tools to help them deliver these omnichannel experiences, these highly personalized experiences to their members. And when we think about that, we want to think about being able to pick the channel of their choice and engage in that channel in a seamless way. So how do we get there? What tools do we need? So let's talk a little bit about that. Mia, why don't we start with you?
I think understanding how the customer drops from one channel to the next is really important. Not all organizations are the same, and as much as omnichannel is important, understanding the channels that your customers use in particular is even more important. So as a financial institution, your customers may not be using every single channel that they would be using in retail. But the channels that they do use, they need to be able to move seamlessly from one to the next. And financial institutions or banks in particular get internet banking right. It's the one thing that works, and customers rarely complain about the internet banking experience. But does the call center agent know what they just did on internet banking, and can they help them through that? That's what's really important. How do they hop from one to the next in a seamless manner?
Mm-hmm. And so with that, Mia, as a follow-up, we know that omnichannel is experience that you just mentioned. We all have to work towards it, but we have to look at the channels or the interactions that banking customers, right, are taking across these channels. So how do we think about that in the context of critical business documents, right? So those regulated documents like the statements and so forth. How does that fit into the ideal communication journey for a personal banking customer?
I think it comes back to understanding how the customer wants to consume that information. So if I'm transitioning from one channel to the next, the document that's available needs to suit the needs. So if I use myself as an example, I want my regulated documents emailed to me so that they're easily accessible. But for quick updates, I live on the portal. I live on internet banking. But that's not to say that my ideal journey would be the same as yours, Liz. For this reason, it's important that communications and notifications are multi-channel, so a customer can choose their ideal journey, and engagement should really be omni-channel, allowing me to seamlessly move from one channel to the next. I should, for the document, be able to slice and dice if I'm online, but have a regulated document that I can just save for tax purposes as a separate document. Like, don't treat me the same. Don't only give me an interactive experience, or don't only give me the PDF. Understand that even I, as a customer, will need different experiences across different channels.
I think that's an excellent point, right? Allow customers the options because they need different experiences across those different channels. So, Doug, Mia also brought up a very good point related to how customers consume documents. How have you seen banks and institutions sort of leverage CCM tools to compose those regulated documents, such as the bank statement, and then deliver those? What's, in your opinion, the best approach to doing this?
Well, I think we've come a long way in that. I think that electronic documents behind multi-factor authentication is a good approach. I think that's working well. The main thing is to give the person empowerment into their own financial health. We all remember the days not so long ago when you had to walk into a financial institution and ask for documentation about one particular transaction and receive that and that alone and pay a fee for it. So we've come a long way in that we have those documents available online so the member can take some control. But I agree with Mia. I think we can do a lot better. And when technology like blockchain and distributed ledgers become more readily available, and you do a search for one particular thing that you want across multiple documents, and have artificial intelligence bring you that information, will be a great advance. So I think we're doing well now, much better than before, but it can be a lot better.
Agree, Doug. I think there's so much on the horizon. You mentioned blockchain and artificial intelligence. And when we think back to that maturity framework, those are the types of technologies that we see in that expert category, right? So all of us have to have our eye on that, right? So we keep moving as technology evolves, right? And as customer expectations really shift. So, Doug, what has Commonwealth, so you spoke very specifically about your approach and what you believe the future looks like, but what have you at Commonwealth really put into place right now to deliver on that omnichannel customer journey? And how did you get to that place? How did you arrive on choosing the path that you took?
Well, we first answered the question that I posed earlier, and we sat down together and in depth decided, what do we want the experience to feel like? How do we want to leave people? What do we want to leave them feeling like? Our common purpose at the credit union is to better lives through our passion to serve. That common purpose came into existence because we realized that we are at our best when we're in front of our members or when we're in front of each other. So we didn't want to abandon that. So with that in mind, we set out to create a digital solution that still contains a personal touch. We've deployed a lot of redundancy in our infrastructure, of course, so that those channels are available whenever they're needed. We brought WebEx live so that our teams could communicate during this time of COVID as well as into the future without having to travel. We have shared those ideas with staff in a way that allowed them to now use documentation to share content. Very soon we will open up that technology to our members and allow our members to begin meeting with us remotely with the same effect of sharing documents through the conversation. We will also very soon open that up on mobile banking and other platforms like that. One of our biggest successes has been interactive teller machines that we have deployed at nearly all of our locations. And this is a walk-up unit that is an ATM, but it's a one-button push to bring this video teller into existence. And the video teller can do everything that they could do in person that they can do on the ITM. So you can even ask for change for a 20, and the teller can give you 4 5s. So it's a great technology platform on the mobile side so that they can have the same experience. We can't give them cash, but we can give them everything else. So as I said earlier, too, we deployed a new phone system that has allowed that communication to exist. We've deployed secure chat in that same channel, and pretty soon we'll see those same products on our mobile platform and our online banking platform. So the whole goal in all of that is to bring those digital products to them, but we also just want to deepen those relationships with existing people. And that includes also our partners. Whenever we do these innovative approaches, we partner with different people. And we, like we said, don't look for the one that's at the top of the list, but we look for the ones that align with our goals. And sometimes we keep partners that we've had for a long time, and sometimes we find new ones because they don't align with the objective. But one of the partners that we have is Doxum, and we have been with them for a number of years. And the reason we stay with them is because they align with our culture. When we express our goals to them, they make those goals their goals. When we express regulations that we have to comply with, they make those regulations their regulations. Our cultures line up together, and we work well together, and we communicate well together. And we're always looking for ways to make things better. And those are the kind of partnerships that you like. And honestly, that's the difference between securing vendors and securing partners. And that relationship with Doxum is a big part of our solution.
Doug, I love how, again, you tied your goal back to the customer experience, right? It's all about having that relationship with your member. And I think your point about choosing and partnering with organizations that allow you to achieve those relationships with your customers and that share your same values is exactly, why Doxum is such a strong offering. The Doxum CCM platform is really the what. It's the what you can use to help deliver on that omnichannel experience, coupled with the how, right? The consulting experience, what Mia and I do with all of our clients to help them really focus in on driving those relationships with their end customers. And then make sure that we're tracking that against your end goal. So I love that you saw that in Doxum. And so for any of those banks that are listening today, if you are looking for a partner who is going to have your goals in mind, and one who can really provide you a platform that can take any sort of input and then output that into an omni-channel way, then Doxum really is the platform for you. And on top of that, you have the expertise of the customer experience, digital strategy consulting that Doxum offers as well. Now, I'd like to sort of focus on, for everyone listening today, sort of key takeaways that they can come out of this webinar with. So Mia, as a consultant, what would you tell banks is the first step to transforming their communications and delivering on that omnichannel experience that we've talked about today?
As we've mentioned a number of times throughout this webinar, data is of utmost importance, but making sure that data is relevant to the customer. And of course, the partner platform and the tools that you're using. But it's not just about the communication and the data. It's really about dealing with the customer as an individual. So my personal journey with the bank is going to be very different to my neighbor's journey. When I open my account, what I need from the account, what my goals are, and actually communicating that within those messages that are sent out is quite important. So using artificial intelligence in your communications actually is a great idea. Start hyper-personalizing the information so that it's really relevant to me and helping me move forward and actually making me a far more valuable customer. So moving me from one bucket to the next, just based on information of my past history and how I'm going to move into the next bucket. Like if I don't have a credit card, how do you get me to get a credit card? Without putting me into debt. But if I'm the right customer profile, hyper-personalize those communications so that it makes sense for me and then move me along and make me a more valuable customer.
I like this. It's almost like a formula, right? Taking the data that you have at your bank, right? Applying that to a CCM platform and then layering an AI tool that can help you hyper-personalize those communications. That's really what's going to lead to that very exceptional omni-channel experience. So with that, I'd like for everyone listening today to sort of think about these 6 key steps to ensuring that you can deliver on the omni-channel promise that your customers are expecting. So the first is really to understand your key drivers and your goals, right? Understand who your customers are at your bank and what their expectations are. And the second is to then define or redefine those goals, right? Knowing your customer and selecting communication journeys. Mia had spoken about changes, these small changes, micro changes, right? So looking at a particular journey at a time and seeing how you can set goals to improve those journeys. So then you want to select the right partner. And I think Doug said it best when he said you have to align yourself with a partner who has your same goals in mind and your culture and approach to change. Then obviously you want to execute by using the formula we just talked about in the previous slide. And all throughout this process, right, creating that framework, looking at a digital maturity framework, plotting yourself where you are, measuring as you go along, and tracking progress towards your goal. And we all know that this process isn't sort of a turn it on, set it and forget it, but this is a rinse and repeat. You have to continue to assess, how is something working? How can we improve it? What micro changes can we make? And so forth. And that's how you continue to deliver on that promise and continue to evolve as technology and customer expectations shift. So Doug and Mia, thank you so much for your time today. Before we open it up to questions from the audience, I always like to conclude with one final thought from each speaker. So I'd like to know, what is the one thing you would want listeners today to lead with? And Doug, we'll start with you.
Well, I would say take the time to understand why you do what you do, and then be sure that you convey that passion to your customers. Omnichannel solutions are a personal journey for every organization. It has to fit into your overall strategic plan and not just a digital plan. And finally, I would say don't let others drag you into leaving what you do best in order to chase them. Learn to compete on your own terms. Just because Amazon might get in the financial institution business doesn't mean that your customers are going to leave and flock to Amazon. There's a reason that they do business with you. There's a reason that they love you, and you need to understand what the reason is, and then be sure that you deploy it in everything that you do every day.
Love that, Doug. And Mia, what would you like everyone to leave with?
I would say that don't deploy solutions in a vacuum. Let customers know the changes that you've made. Communicate with them. Bring communication to the top of your strategy in everything that you do, in every single way. There's so many examples of companies having to make really quick changes over COVID and never communicating those to their customers. So don't just make the changes, communicate the changes.
Thank you, Mia. And with that, we'll turn it back over to Mike for some questions.
Thank you very much, Liz. And yeah, everyone, as promised, we've got a little bit of time here for some questions. So if you've got something on your mind, now would definitely be the time to get that question into the queue. But I do see some good ones here already. So let's just jump right in. Let me ask Mia this question. So Doug spoke about the importance of how you make people feel. What advice would you give about adapting key messaging for a post-COVID-19 audience?
2020, I think, brought a market change in what consumers value. They value kindness and community, and they're really looking for trust. And they're looking to build on the business relationships. So if they're looking to build on those relationships and feel a connection, how do we bring that trust to the forefront and understand that customers have changed and make sure that you're meeting that changed customer, because there is a shift in communication baseline. Make sure to meet your customers where they are and speak to them in a manner that makes sense to them at that time.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's see here. How about, here's one for Doug. You mentioned culture change as a key factor in removing data silos and providing access to data that can drive your communication strategy. Could you elaborate on the idea that failure is okay as long as we fail forward? And how do you get buy-in for this from senior leadership?
Sure. Well, for us, it was pretty unique. About 9 years ago, we had a change at the CEO level, and Karen Harper became president CEO after our current one retired. And one of the things she wanted to do was change the overall experience of the credit union for staff and for members. So we partnered with the creators of Magic, and we trained our leaders and all of our staff under the Disney Institute. And in that, we learned a lot of common principles that we don't think about every day, but things like when people bring a problem to you and your response is, hey, that's not me, you need to talk to somebody else. And our attitude now is that may not be my fault, but that is my problem. This is an opportunity to help, and we seize that moment. We know that everybody doesn't get a vote, but we believe everybody has a voice, and we listen to everyone's voice when we're in the decision-making process. very careful about not bringing titles into conference rooms so that collaboration can occur, because collaboration cannot occur with rank in the room. And when we deploy new services and products, we ask this question. And as a consumer, each person can kind of pose this to themselves. When you're buying a product or service, what do you want? Exactly what you ask for, or more than you ever dreamed of? And we always shoot for more than you ever dreamed of. Our goal in every situation is to serve with passion. And at the end of every transaction, at the end of every conversation, to have it end with, wow, that was amazing.
Interesting. Thank you.
Excellent. But to your point on the fail forward thing, you remember when people make mistakes, they try to hide it because they know there's going to be punishment associated with it. But those are your greatest learning opportunities. And when someone makes a mistake, if they feel comfortable in coming forward and saying, hey, this didn't work out the way I thought that it would, and you as a leader coach them to improve that and make a difference, that's far better than holding somebody accountable for a mistake that they could have learned a tremendous amount from.
Excellent. Interesting. Thank you. Thanks, Doug. All right. I've got a good question here for Liz. Liz, I understand the goal of an omnichannel communication strategy, but I hear people talk about omnichannel. What is this and how is it different?
I was wondering if someone would bring that up, actually. Omnichannel, we are hearing that quite a bit in the industry now, and it is different from omnichannel. So as we talked about, omnichannel before was the customers to sort of navigate seamlessly across channels and have the same experience, right? So when they're talking to the call center agent, then they can go online and they can seamlessly sort of pick up where they left off. Omnichannel is different, though. Omnichannel really refers to the ability for a customer to communicate in the channel of their choice, but that channel is sort of supporting the consumer's next action. So essentially, it's really about not just providing the same experience across channels, but it really has to be about all places, all times. You must be in the right place at the right time. So for this particular transaction, you need to support the customer's actions in this channel versus this channel versus this one. So it sort of takes omnichannel to the next level and adds that next best action or that next thing that you want the customer to do, and making sure that the channel supports that.
Excellent. Excellent. I think that is actually a really great note to wrap up on here. We're just about at the top of the hour, and we've gotten through the questions we're going to take today. Really want to thank all three of the speakers today, Mia, Liz, and Doug. Really, really engaging insights here on this very important topic. And also, everyone in the audience, want to thank you for being here. Trust me, we would not want to do it without you. So appreciate your participation today. And please keep an eye out. We'll be sending you a follow-up email in the next day or two that'll have a link to a recording of this event, as well as the slides themselves. So you'll be able to, if you didn't have a chance to download these from the console today, you'll get an email with those links. So you'll be able to do that in the future. So you'll be able to review all of this great material at your leisure in the future. And we encourage you to do that. And with that, I think I will officially wrap it up. Wish everyone a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope you'll join us again here very soon. Thanks so much.